The moment I walked into our office that Friday afternoon, I knew something was wrong. The air felt different, heavy with secrets and expensive perfume I didn't wear. David sat behind his desk, looking annoyingly pleased with himself, while Andrea Porter perched on the edge like she belonged there. My name is Rebecca Chen, and at 42, I was about to watch my life's work crumble in the most spectacular way possible. Or at least that's what my husband thought. Perfect timing, David said, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. We were just about to call you. I set my laptop bag down carefully, taking in the scene. The wall of awards we earned together over the past decade. The framed photo of us on opening day of Chen Technologies, both of us bright-eyed and full of dreams. And now Andrea, in her perfectly tailored suit, looking at me with poorly concealed triumph. Call me about what? I asked, though I already knew. The signs had been there for months. Hushed phone calls, late-night meetings, documents hastily minimized when I entered the room. I'd just been waiting to see how it would play out. David leaned back in his chair. My chair, really, since I bought it with my inheritance when we first started the company. I've made some changes to our corporate structure, he said, sliding a document across the desk. Andrea has purchased controlling interest in Chen Technologies. As of today, you're no longer needed in an executive capacity. The words hung in the air like smoke. I picked up the document, scanning the details I'd already anticipated. David had sold his shares, and somehow some of mine, to Andrea, effectively cutting me out of the company I'd built from the ground up. How did you get authorization to sell my shares? I asked, keeping my voice steady. I never signed anything. Andrea's smile widened. Oh, but you did. Remember that stack of contracts from the Miller acquisition last month? You really should read everything before you sign. Of course. The Miller papers, hundreds of pages of legal documents that needed immediate signatures. David had insisted on handling them himself, said he'd mark all the relevant pages for me. Just trust me, he'd said. When have I ever steered us wrong? I wanted to laugh at the irony, but instead I just nodded. I see, and I suppose this means you two are. Andrea and I have been working closely together, David said, reaching for her hand. We share the same vision for the company's future, something you and I lost somewhere along the way. Lost somewhere along the way. That's how he described 12 years of marriage, 15 years of building a tech empire together. Like it was a set of car keys he'd misplaced. Congratulations, I said, surprising them both with my calm. I assume my office needs to be cleared out by the end of the day? David frowned slightly, probably thrown by my lack of reaction. Take the weekend, he said magnanimously, but we'll need you gone by Monday. Andrea has some big changes planned. I'm sure she does, I thought, watching them exchange smug glances. Andrea had been gunning for a position at Chen Technologies for years, first as a competitor, then as a potential partner. I'd always blocked her attempts to get involved, sensing something predatory in her interests. Now I knew why. Fine, I said, gathering my things. I'll have everything cleared out by Monday. As I turned to leave, David called out, Beck. The old nickname felt wrong coming from his lips now. I am sorry it had to end this way, but you've been holding the company back. We need to evolve. I paused at the door, thinking about the email sitting in my drafts folder, time to send in exactly 48 hours. Don't worry about me, David. I'm sure everything will work out exactly as it should. The drive home was surreal. 15 years of my life, gone in a single afternoon. Or at least, that's what they thought. David never understood why I spent so many late nights in the office, why I insisted on handling the cybersecurity protocols myself. You're too controlling, he complained. Learn to delegate. But I had learned something. I learned not to trust him. The signs had been there for months. Mysterious meetings, unexplained expenses, files moved between servers in the middle of the night. I tracked it all, documented everything, waiting to see where it would lead. When I pulled into our driveway, my driveway since I bought the house before we married, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister, Marie. Just saw David and Andrea at Cafe Luna, looking pretty cozy. Want me to key his car? I smiled, typing back, not necessary. Just stick to the plan. Marie was the only one who knew what was coming. As the head of cybersecurity for a major bank, she'd helped me set up the digital trail that would protect me when everything went down. Inside the house, I went straight to my home office and booted up my personal laptop. The one David didn't know about. The email was still there in my drafts, scheduled to send Sunday afternoon to every member of our board of directors, major shareholders, and key clients. The subject line was simple: evidence of fraud at Chen Technologies. Attached were hundreds of documents showing how David had been cooking the books for years, inflating profits and hiding losses. He thought he was clever, creating fake projects to funnel money through. But I'd been tracking every transaction, every forged signature, every penny that disappeared into accounts that didn't exist. And now he'd brought Andrea into it. Poor, ambitious Andrea, who thought she was buying into a successful tech company, not realizing she was really purchasing a share in what would soon be the biggest corporate fraud scandal in the state. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus Wong, our head of development. Just heard the news. Tell me you have a plan. Already in motion, I replied. Keep your head down until Monday. Marcus had been with us from the beginning, one of the few who knew that most of our breakthrough innovations had come from my work, not David's. He'd watched as David took credit for my ideas, claiming the spotlight while I worked behind the scenes. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled into my favorite chair, the one that faced the garden where David and I had once talked about growing old together. Funny how things change. Opening my laptop again, I pulled up the other files I'd been collecting, emails between David and Andrea going back months, planning not just their takeover but their future together. The pictures my private investigator had taken of their secret meetings. The evidence of insider trading I'd discovered when I started digging deeper into their relationship. By Monday, everyone would know the truth. The board would have no choice but to act, and Andrea's purchase of company shares would be worthless. The scandal would probably sink her own company too. Some might call it revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. David and Andrea thought they were so clever, using those Miller contracts to trick me. They never stopped to ask why I'd agreed to sign anything without reading it carefully first. My phone lit up with another text, this time from David. Dinner at Lorenzo's to celebrate the changes, for old time's sake. I stared at the message, imagining him and Andrea at our favorite restaurant, probably sitting at our usual table, planning how they'd reshape my company in their image. Sorry, I typed back. Busy packing up my office. You two have fun. Let them celebrate. Let them think they'd won. In 48 hours, their perfect plan would explode in their faces and I would be ready to pick up the pieces. I took another sip of wine and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with carefully documented evidence in an ironclad paper trail. The weekend crept by with excruciating slowness. I spent Saturday methodically packing up my office, each box carefully labeled and organized. David and Andrea stayed away, probably celebrating their victory at some expensive restaurant. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from concerned employees who'd heard rumors about the change in leadership. I responded to each one the same way. Wait until Monday. Everything will make sense then. By Sunday morning, my home office had become a command center. 3 laptops tracked different aspects of Chen Technologies' systems, security protocols I'd put in place years ago that David had never bothered to understand. Marie sat beside me, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she monitored network activity. They're trying to access the secure servers, she reported, frowning at her screen. Look at these login attempts. I leaned over to look. David's credentials, attempting to breach areas of our system he'd never shown interest in before. He's looking for anything that might incriminate him, I said. Andrea must be getting nervous. Too late, Marie smirked. Everything important is already backed up and time-stamped. They can delete whatever they want now. We have copies of everything. At precisely 2 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Wong's number. Rebecca, he said without preamble, David just called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Says he wants to discuss exciting new directions for the company. I checked the time. My email was scheduled to send at 3 p.m., exactly 1 hour from now. Let me guess, 8 a.m. meeting. Yeah, Andrea will be there to outline her vision for the future. Perfect, I said. Just make sure you're there early. You'll want a good seat for this one. After I hung up, Marie gave me a concerned look. Are you sure about this timing? Once that email goes out. It has to be today, I said firmly. They're planning to announce structural changes tomorrow that would make it harder to prove the fraud. And anyway, I glanced at my phone, which showed a text from David. having dinner with the board tonight, sharing our exciting news. They're all going to be together when it hits. I want to see their faces when everything falls apart. Right on cue, my phone lit up with another message, this one from an unknown number. I recognize the area code though, New York. Mrs. Chen, this is Agent Sarah Martinez with the SEC. We received some concerning information about Chen Technologies. Are you available to talk? I smiled. The anonymous tip I'd sent to the Securities and Exchange Commission last week had done its job. Of course, Agent Martinez. I've been expecting your call. Marie watched as I spoke with the agent, explaining how I discovered the financial irregularities, how I documented everything meticulously. I directed her to the secure server where I'd uploaded copies of all the evidence. This is quite extensive, Agent Martinez said, sounding impressed. How long have you been gathering this information? Since I first suspected something was wrong, I replied. About 6 months ago. The sale of shares to Andrea Porter was just the final piece. After I hung up, Marie checked her watch. 30 minutes until the email goes out. Last chance to change your mind. I shook my head, thinking about all the nights I'd spent building this company while David took the credit. All the innovations he claimed as his own. All the times he dismissed my concerns about Andrea's interest in our technology. No going back now. At 2:45, my phone started buzzing with notifications. David had posted pictures on social media. Him and Andrea had an expensive restaurant with several board members, all raising glasses to new beginnings. Then, at exactly 3 p.m., everything changed. First came the email notifications, hundreds of them, as my message went out to every key player in the company ecosystem. Then the phone calls started. Board members, shareholders, clients, all demanding answers about the evidence I provided. Holy shit, Marie whispered, watching as the chaos unfolded on her monitors. They're all accessing the files at once. The server logs are going crazy. My phone rang. David. I let it go to voicemail. Then Andrea. Ignored. Then our chief financial officer, who had to be realizing that his signature was on many of the fraudulent documents. At 3:15, the first news alert hit. Breaking. Major fraud allegations at Chen Technologies. CEO and new partner implicated. They work fast, Marie commented. I made sure to copy several financial reporters on the email, I explained. Ones who've been investigating corporate fraud cases, they knew exactly what they were looking at. By 3:30, David was desperate. His texts became increasingly frantic. What have you done? This is all lies. You're destroying everything we built. Answer your FHOE. I forwarded each message to Agent Martinez, who had asked to be kept informed of any contact. At 4 p.m., Marcus called again. The board just canceled tomorrow's meeting, he reported, sounding gleeful. And you should see Andrea. She's having a complete meltdown in the office. Keeps screaming about how David promised her everything was legitimate. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. How much did she pay for those shares? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the documents I found. 8 million, Marcus said. Her entire company's reserves, plus personal loans. She's ruined. Just then, my security system pinged. Someone was at my front door. The camera showed David, looking disheveled and furious. Right on schedule, I muttered. Want me to call the police? Marie offered. I considered it, but then had a better idea. No, I think it's time I faced him. Besides, I held up my phone, showing the active recording app. This conversation might be very interesting to the SEC. As I walked to the door, I could hear David pounding on it, calling my name. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened it. You psychotic bitch, he snarled, trying to push past me into the house. Do you have any idea what you've done? I blocked his entry. I think the better question is, do you have any idea what you've done? Securities fraud, embezzlement, insider trading. Should I go on? His face was red with rage. Those documents are fake. You're trying to frame me because you're jealous of Andrea. I laughed then, actually laughed. Oh, David, you really should have paid more attention to the cybersecurity protocols I put in place. Every document is authenticated. Every transaction logged. Every conversation recorded. I paused, watching the color drain from his face, including the ones where you and Andrea planned this whole takeover. You can't prove. I already have. I held up my phone, showing him the text from Agent Martinez. The SEC has everything. They're probably getting a warrant as we speak. He staggered slightly, reaching for the doorframe to steady himself. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Why, he whispered. Why didn't he just confront me when he first suspected? I thought about all the years I'd spent in his shadow, watching him take credit for my work. About how he'd so easily betrayed not just our marriage but everything we built together. Because you needed to learn something, David. Something about underestimating people. I stepped back, reaching for the door. Especially the ones who know all your secrets. As I closed the door on his stunned face, another news alert popped up on my phone. Chen Technologies stock halted after fraud allegations. Criminal investigation launched. Marie appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Is it wrong that I'm really enjoying this? I took a glass, clinking it against hers. Not at all. The best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's watching them realize they never saw it coming. The next few weeks unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of justice. Monday morning brought exactly what I'd expected. FBI agents swarming our corporate offices, David and Andrea being led out in handcuffs, and reporters camped outside my house hoping for a statement. I watched it all from my home office, where I'd set up a command center with Marie. Multiple screens showed news coverage, stock tickers, and email communications from increasingly panicked board members. Chen Technologies CEO David Chen and partner Andrea Porter arrested on multiple fraud charges. The headlines screamed. The stock had been halted, but market analysts were already predicting the company's value would plummet when trading resumed. The board is calling an emergency meeting, Marcus reported via video call. They're desperate to talk to you. Everyone knows you're the only one who can salvage this mess. I glanced at my watch, 9:15 am. Tell them I'll be there at 10. And Marcus, make sure everyone from the development team is present. It's time they knew who really created our core technology. As I prepared for the meeting, my phone buzzed with a message from David's lawyer. Mrs. Chen, my client wishes to discuss a deal. He's willing to testify against Ms. Porter in exchange for leniency. I forwarded the message to Agent Martinez without responding. Let them turn on each other. It would only make the prosecution's job easier. The Chen Technologies building looked different as I walked through the lobby. Security guards who used to barely acknowledge me now stood at attention. Employees who'd watched David marginalize me for years suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The boardroom was packed when I arrived. Board members, executives, and key developers all sat in tense silence as I took my place at the head of the table, David's old seat. Before we begin, I said, opening my laptop, I want to be clear about something. What happened here isn't just about David's fraud or his affair with Andrea. It's about years of deception that goes to the very heart of this company. I pulled up a series of patent applications, technical specifications, and development logs. Every major innovation this company has produced over the past decade, the quantum encryption protocol, the neural network architecture, the distributed processing system, they weren't David's creations. They were mine. The room erupted in murmurs. Marcus stood up, addressing the board directly. She's telling the truth. I was there. We all were. David took credit, but Rebecca was always the real genius behind our success. But why didn't you say anything? Janet Moore, our longest-serving board member, asked. I smiled grimly. I did, many times. But David was very good at dismissing me, at making everyone believe I was just the perfectionist wife who needed to be managed. You all saw what you wanted to see. Over the next 2 hours, I laid out my plan to save the company. We would need to be completely transparent about the fraud, cooperate fully with investigators, and restructure from the ground up. But we could survive this if they were willing to trust me. The question, I concluded, is whether this board is ready to acknowledge its own complicity in what happened here. You all watched David take credit for my work. You approved his decisions without proper oversight. You ignored red flags because he was charming and confident. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Janet spoke again. I moved to appoint Rebecca Chen as interim CEO with full authority to implement her restructuring plan. The vote was unanimous. As the room cleared out, Marcus lingered behind. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. Andrea's company, it's not just the $8 million she invested. Their entire intellectual property portfolio, it was based on stolen data from us. From your designs. I wasn't surprised. I know. It's all documented in the evidence I gave the FBI. Her company won't survive this either. That evening, as I sat in my new office, my real office, Marie called with an update. David's talking. He's thrown Andrea completely under the bus, claiming she masterminded everything. And guess what? She's doing the same to him. I thought about them both, sitting in separate jail cells, betraying each other just as easily as they betrayed me. How fitting. The next few months were intense. Rebuilding a company while cooperating with a federal investigation isn't easy. But I had something now that I'd never had before. Complete control over my own creation. The technology I developed, finally acknowledged as mine, proved even more valuable than anyone had realized. Without David's manipulation and fraud obscuring the true financial picture, Chen Technologies was actually in a stronger position than ever. 1 year after that fateful Friday afternoon, I stood in front of our employees, announcing our most successful quarter ever. Our stock had not only recovered but reached new highs. We'd won back every client we'd lost during the scandal, plus dozens more who appreciated our new commitment to transparency and innovation. David and Andrea both took plea deals, testifying against each other and several other conspirators. They would serve significant prison time, and their assets, including Andrea's worthless company shares, were seized. As I wrapped up the company meeting, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former tech CEO David Chen sentenced to 15 years for fraud. I closed the alert without reading further. David's story didn't matter anymore. I was writing my own. Later that night, as I sat in my garden with a glass of wine, Marie joined me with a small package. "What's this?" I asked as she handed it to me. "Open it." Inside was a framed copy of the first patent I ever filed, now correctly listing me as the sole inventor. Below was a handwritten note from Janet Moore. "Thank you for showing us what real leadership looks like." I traced my name on the patent, remembering the young woman who'd let her husband take credit for her genius because she thought that's what a good wife did. "You know what's funny?" I said to Marie. "David always told me I was too cautious, too detail-oriented. He said I needed to learn to let go." She laughed. And instead, those same qualities brought him down. My phone buzzed. Another message from Agent Martinez. "Thought you'd want to know. Andrea Porter is volunteering to testify in 3 other corporate fraud cases." Apparently, this wasn't her first attempt at this kind of takeover. I set the phone down, looking up at the stars. David and Andrea had thought they were so clever, using those Miller contracts to steal my shares. They never realized they were actually signing their own confessions in documents I carefully prepared and quietly slipped into the stack. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's making them expose themselves. "To new beginnings," Marie said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers, thinking about all the women who'd been silenced, overlooked, or pushed aside by men like David. "To owning our power," I corrected, "and never letting anyone steal it again."